It's funny. I feel like a lot of times they're like, should we go to dinner? Do we need to, should we hang out? Because we're in each other's lives so much and we're going through this, constant communication. But no, they're always just I have the best clients in the world and they're always just very grateful for just my expertise, my knowledge, and a lot of times my patience throughout the process with them. So that's what I hear a lot.
Welcome to the Dream Home Podcast, the show where real estate meets real talk. Hosted by John Nagle, a seasoned expert with over $7 billion in real estate financing experience. This podcast features top realtors, builders, and financial pros. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, we've got the tools to help you make smarter moves. Here's your host, John Nagle.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Dream Home Podcast, where we explore the communities, people, and programs that help turn your dream of homeownership into reality. I'm your host, John Nagle with CMG Home Loans. Today, I'm incredibly excited to be joined by someone who truly exemplifies what real estate is all about, Betty Joyce, associate broker and realtor with DeBrew Realty based in Mansfield, Texas. Betty brings over 11 years of experience in real estate and sales, with an impressive career that includes over 125 closed sales, totaling $52 million in volume. She's passionate about creating stress-free, relationship-driven experiences for buyers and sellers, guided by her core values of integrity, transparency, excellence, and kindness. DeBrew Realty itself is more than a brokerage. It's a faith-based organization rooted in love, honor, and excellence, helping clients build not just homes, but legacies. So today we're going to dig into Betty's superpowers, her journey, her impact, and her wisdom for anyone buying, selling, or investing in real estate right now. Betty, welcome to the Dream Home Podcast. We appreciate your taking time today to visit with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that kind introduction.
Yes, you're very welcome. So Betty, let's kick it off with this. What would you say are your superpowers as a realtor? What makes you working with you different from anyone else?
Yeah, so I think some of my top strengths as a real estate agent would be integrity and honesty. I'm not trying to sell something to someone. I'm trying to help someone find what they want, or get them top dollar for what they have, right? I also think my communication skills and my negotiation skills are very strong. And another thing that I would consider a superpower would be, funny enough, my empathy. I tell people when you're in real estate, you're a little bit like a therapist. You're helping people through what can be a very difficult time. So it's not all the first-time home buyer pregnant with their kid. A lot of time you're dealing with death or divorce, job relocation. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you're walking people through. And so I have a heart for people and I genuinely care about them on the other side of the transaction. People are not dollar signs to me. And so I think that people can feel that when they work with me. So I would consider those some of my superpowers, if you will.
Okay, well, that's awesome for sure. And if you had to pick one thing clients say most often after closing with you, what would it be?
It's funny. I feel like a lot of times they're like, should we go to dinner? Do we need to, should we hang out? Because we're in each other's lives so much and we're going through this, constant communication. But no, they're always just I have the best clients in the world and they're always just very grateful for just my expertise, my knowledge, and a lot of times my patience throughout the process with them. So that's what I hear a lot.
Okay. And buying or selling a home can be sometimes feel overwhelming, especially for first timers. How do you help ease those fears and guide people through the process?
I think one of the first things I like to do is just normalize how scary it is and how overwhelming it is. I often will prep my clients like, hey, this is going to feel like another little part-time job you have over here with all of the documents you need to get to the lender or with prepping your house for selling. So I oftentimes just try to normalize that. And I let them know like, hey, you might need a vent at some point in this process. And I'm here for that too. But then also, obviously, just educating them and communicating with them about what the process looks like. negotiating things on their behalf and explaining to them how I'm going to be handling the other side. But I think so much of it is just letting them know that we are all human in the same boat. And this is going to feel overwhelming because you don't buy a house every day and you don't sell a house every day, right?
Yes, that's true.
Professional that does. And so I'm like, you don't have to know all of this. I will help you through it. And you're going to have questions, and there's no stupid questions. So always feel free to ask me and just ask away.
Perfect. That sounds terrific for the buyers and sellers for sure. So can you tell us about a time when you had to overcome major obstacles for a client and how that experience shaped your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had several doozies, I will say. There's always, the financing can fall through. One that I recently had, we had encountered some pretty big issues with the plumbing. I was on the buy side, and, I'm just having to be very upfront with my buyer about cast iron pipes. And we were able to negotiate to get the sellers to fix it. However, the quote that the plumber gave, as they give you an estimate, and then as they get in there, it's like, oh, just kidding. We actually found this additional hairline crack in the pipe. And the way I wrote the repair amendment was that there had to be a passing plumbing test. And he did the work, but there wasn't a passing plumbing test. And so it ended up being a lot more expensive for the seller. And they really got to where they were sort of tapped out. And so just kind of navigating it, we had to extend the closing date by like 3 weeks. Something that was really beneficial in that transaction is the seller actually used my plumber, and he's phenomenal. And they don't always agree to that. But he ended up giving a really great deal. He didn't even charge for half of the tunneling because I give him so much business. So it ended up all working out, but it was definitely a challenge. And, as a buyer, you just get really nervous. But I will say we protected them in the way the wording for those amendments is so crucial. And so I was able to protect them. They ended up getting 100% of the cast iron pipes replaced, brand new pipes throughout the property. But the whole process of navigating the emotions of it all, even for the other side. And I've been on the other side with sellers where they end up having to spend more than they thought. And so I think the setting the expectations up front is so important, because if you sort of act like that you're going to walk away with X amount of dollars, you don't, right? And there's all kinds of things that can happen. And even when I'm pricing a property, I tell people, this is what the data says. This is the, the comparative market analysis that I did. This is around where I think we can price your home. However, we don't have a way to see into the future. I don't have a way to know what a buyer is going to offer and how this is all going to shake out. So I think so much is setting those expectations and then really being able to roll with the punches when they come, because they're going to come. It will come. And the more I've been in this business, the more I know that it's not if, it's when, but it's knowing how to navigate those challenges and communicate effectively on both sides.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect example of you protecting the buyer with the proper language in the purchase agreement. That was the first step. But you also ended up protecting the seller a bit, because with your plumber, giving the seller a break on what that cost was, so it really benefited both parties. So that was, even though I'm sure the seller wasn't too happy about spending money, to sell the home, they came out much better than they might have under another scenario with another buyer and another real estate agent that didn't have such good resources.
Absolutely. And we're on the same team, right? Seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy. Of course, when I'm representing the buyer, I am negotiating on their behalf. But at the end of the day, we are trying to all work together to get this to be a smooth transaction for both sides. That's the goal, right? So yeah, it ends up being a little bit of back and forth toggling that you have to do at times, but it always ends up very rewarding. And every single one of those, crazy transactions, I feel like I learn more and more as an agent. And I always just say, you know what? The more hard ones I go through, the more knowledge I'm getting under my belt. So
yeah. Absolutely. So let's shift gears to something really heartwarming. Can you share a standout moment, maybe a story of a family you helped or a client who really touched you?
Yes, it's funny. I feel like every single one of them, I feel like every single client, there's something that happens throughout the transaction that ends up just being very bonding. But I do have one client in particular that I actually mentioned this earlier, but he was looking for a home for his son and he had a really tight budget. And there's a lot of agents out there that don't, they're like, hey, my minimum is 500,000. I'm not going to work with somebody. And I don't operate like that. That's not why I do what I do. So I'm not like a luxury only. I definitely do the high end. But this man reached out to me and he's like, nobody will take me. And I said, oh my, let's go. And I was able to find him. His budget was $180,000 in Dallas. So it was tough. And so I know in so many ways, someone might be like, that's not worth your time. What are you doing? Like driving to all these showings. But it was the most rewarding thing. And at the end, we did find him a house. At the end, he's sending me pictures of his son in the backyard. They're playing baseball. And I just was like, oh, like, this is why I do what I do, right? Like your home is where memories are made. It's a lot of times, for some people where their kids take their first steps or like, he wanted to be there through high school. So I was thinking about like, oh my goodness, this is going to be probably where gets his prom pictures taken. And so that's one that was really heartwarming for me. And I always check in on them. And it's funny because he ended up like telling his family about me. And so that one deal, I always tell people, you can't outgive. And if you give and give, like it will come back around to you. Whether it be from the person or in some other avenue, it always comes back around. So that's one that has really blessed my heart. And I look back on it, it was such a tough deal. But once we got to the finish line, the purpose that I felt of what I do feels so much bigger than just, real estate.
Yeah, well, that's such a beautiful and rewarding story. That is for sure, because the toughness of the deal to find a home that's going to be suitable at that price point in the Dallas-Fort Worth market is amazing. And what you did, you changed their lives. Really, you truly did, to give them, that safety of a beautiful home to live in, and went that extra mile, even though it wasn't about, just like you said, it wasn't about the money, because you spent so much time and effort to find the perfect fit for them. So that's great. So I imagine those are the moments that really keep you going. What inspires you the most about being part of someone's home journey?
I think just that very thing. You're a part of such a big part of their lives. For so many people, this is the biggest purchase they're ever going to make. Sometimes, like I mentioned prior, there's people that are selling their family heirloom, the home that their grandma lived in. And so I love being able to help people with confidence make informed, wise decisions on what's the biggest purchase transaction that they're ever going to have. And it does inspire me to see getting them what they wanted, right? It's like, oh, we need more space, or we really want that yard, or we really want to be in that school district. And you're really coming alongside like such an intimate part of someone's life is their home. And it's just such an honor, and it's very rewarding. I always tell people real estate is not for everyone. Mm. It's not for the faint of heart. It's hard, but man, is it rewarding. And it doesn't feel like a job to me. It feels like part of who I am, getting to walk with people through wherever they are in that little blimp of their life,
Yeah, that is awesome. So you have a reputation for making the process smoother and less stressful. Are there any resources or systems that you use that really enhances the experience for your clients?
Yeah, well, for me, part of why I am able to do what I do so well, I do have a transaction coordinator who's phenomenal. I have a team around me of just people that can sort of help, especially on the sell side. There's a lot of negotiation and a lot of transaction coordinating, if you will. And then, lender partnerships, as they're so important. So many times I tell people you just don't know what you don't know. And so you need to make that call and see what you are qualified for, right? and just educating people, just being able to have the knowledge and the expertise. I think the more I've done this and the more experience you have, it really matters in this industry, because it also helps put people at ease whenever something does pop up and I'm like, oh yeah, I've dealt with this before, or I've had this similar thing happen, or I had this other crazy thing happen. You know what I'm saying? So I think just a lot of the resources is, experience, and then the people around me that I'm able to connect people with. I tell them, I'm like, you don't have to be a plumber. You don't have to be an electrician. You don't have to be a HVAC technician. You need to know one. And I know one. And I have great people that I can connect you with for whatever that is that you might have. If you need a roofer, I've got a roofer. And it really does take a village. Takes a village in real estate to sort of all the moving pieces. But that's what I would say to try to help make things a little bit less stressful is just knowing that there's people that know this more than you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that is so important. And I don't know that a lot of people realize that how important the team aspect of this is, because when they're bringing you on board, they're bringing that team with all those resources. So you're not going to need a plumber on every single transaction, but at times you do. It's good that you have that resource and those transaction coordinators. That's huge to have someone to make that process smoother, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm really picky about the people I work with for that reason, because I don't want to recommend a plumber who's going to do a shoddy plumbing job and then the buyer, in 4 months be calling me, hey, this happened, right? So I really do try to make sure that people are looking out for the best interests of the client. As you know, in the lending world, there's a lot of lenders out there that will kind of push buyers to buy, overextend, if you will. I'm like, just because you're qualified for that much doesn't mean that's how much of a monthly payment that you want to be making. So you need to be having those conversations. And when I partner with people who put the client's best interests first, it sounds so cliche, but when people really do that, it makes all the difference in the world. And I've seen the other side of that, where they're just trying to push because they're going to get a bigger commission. And it's really devastating for the buyer and the other side of that. You know what I mean? So I'm very picky about who I'm introducing as part of that team, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what are a few key tips or resources you always share with first-time home buyers or sellers to set them up for success?
Yeah, I always start with, you don't know what you don't know. I think sometimes people think, oh, I can't buy I think people are embarrassed of like, what if I'm not able to pre-qualify, to get pre-qualified for a home loan? So I always like to just start with, here's the thing. Even if you're not ready yet, if you want to buy a house at some point, you need to know the steps you need to take to get to where you need to be, right? You just don't know what you don't know. So you need to start with having a conversation with a lender. See if you're pre-approved. If there's an issue with your credit, there's credit repair companies. There's lenders who will work with you on getting your credit where it needs to be. If you need to pay off a small credit card, that might shoot up your credit score by 40, 50 points. All of a sudden you're in a different bracket, right? So I just like to kind of share on the front end where to start. And then, maintenance tips and stuff like getting a good inspector. I'm really passionate. I always let the buyer choose if they have someone they want to pick, obviously, but it's a really big deal to have a good home inspector and someone who's just going to go in. They work for a big company. They're checking off things. It can be a really big disservice if you're not doing your due diligence there. So I really try to give them as much resources as I can. It's always a lot of information at first. So we sort of take it step by step. I do give out like an app to show neighborhood areas, like the crime ratings and the school district ratings, especially if I'm working with clients that are moving from out of state. I try to provide a lot of resources like that for them, just to kind of set them up for success. And, hey, if you're going to be within an hour of the airport, here's some things to consider, So I just try to sort of give them some handlebars to grab onto as they sort of start the roller coaster that they're getting on.
That's absolutely. So walk me through what a client's experience looks like when working with you from the first conversation to closing.
Yeah, so that really depends, obviously, on the transaction. If you're on the buy side or the sell side, it always starts with a conversation. It starts with chatting with me on the phone. I'm very hands on. I always ask my clients, "What's your preferred method of communication?" A lot of times, people prefer text messaging, so we're getting lots of texting going back and forth. We on the buy side, we get started with the lender. I connect them with a lender. I give them a couple different options to choose from. I encourage them to talk to them and see who they feel the most comfortable with. And then we get them on the portal. If once we know that they're pre-qualified for a certain amount, I'll get them on a portal through the MLS where we are getting them notified of properties that hit their criteria when they pop on the market. And then we start the really fun part of the showings and all of that. And then, like I said, each transaction is going to be dependent on the house, right? The how old is the house? Are we talking about a new build, or is this a pre-existing home? We go through the inspection process. We go through obviously the lending side. There's so many hurdles. There's the appraisal. And I do my best to just educate. I think something that's really important in real estate is trying to identify how your client likes to receive information. There's different personality types out there, and some people are very detail oriented. They want to see every single thing. They want to know exactly what they're signing. We're going to have an hour-long conversation about the buyer rep agreement. You have other people who are like, just give me bullet points. I don't really care, right? So it kind of depends, I would say, on the person and even some of it isn't even about their personality. Some of it's about where they're at in life, right? Like they're selling and buying at the same time. They're super stressed and overloaded. They've just got a job promotion and there's lots going on. So it all really kind of depends on the client, but there's just consistent communication, clear communication, a lot of patience. I tell people there are no stupid questions. I'm going to say a lot and you're going to forget half what I said. And so we'll say it again until you fully feel like you understand it, And then, once we finally get to the closing day, there's the walkthrough, there's all the fun stuff in between. And on the sell side, it starts with a free home evaluation. I come over, I will run some comps first, and then I go and I have to see it in person because people can send me pictures, but they forget about that crack on the wall or, the fact that this door isn't closing. So on the sell side, I do a home evaluation and then I sit down and talk you through. And obviously in the middle, there's lots of paperwork and things you have to sign and lots of conversations on risk, right? With what we're agreeing to or what we're not agreeing to. I try to really make sure if the buyer is signing up for a house that has cast iron pipes, that doesn't mean the pipes are going to go out tomorrow, but they're going to go out at some point. And so you need to know what you're getting yourself into. So just lots of conversations, lots of communication. And I do try to, the best I can, make it fun. And, I'll send memes and I'll just we get to where if something's going crazy, we have to laugh about it. Right. So I try my best to sort of calm the nerves. And then once we get to the closing table, I've got, I've tried my best to do personalized little gifts and always just thanking them so much for allowing, for trusting me throughout the process and allowing me to walk side by side with them.
So if someone is thinking about buying or selling but feels unsure or intimidated by the market, what advice would you give them right now?
I would just say, once again, you don't know what you don't know, and to have conversation. I think there's a lot of nuance around real estate, right? Like the rates go up. So people are like, oh, I need to wait for the rates to drop. Well, I'm also seeing sellers, come off the price a lot. I tell people, the purchase price of the house, when the rates go down, oftentimes there's more buyers in the pool. So then you're paying higher on the purchase price, which is a fixed amount, whereas the interest rate is not. And if the rates go down, you can refinance. And obviously there's costs associated with that. But I just try to have a conversation, emphasize to them that, they're not alone in the process. And I also always tell buyers, like in the state of Texas, you have an option period. You can back out during that time for any reason. You'll lose your option fee, couple $100, but you're not having to buy a house that you don't want to buy, right? And you don't even, it doesn't have to be based on the inspection. Everything can come back fine and you can wake up and be like, I'm just afraid. But I do try to emphasize, like, if you want to do this, it's never going to feel comfortable because what you don't do all the time is not comfortable. The first time you rode a bike, it wasn't comfortable. The first time the first time you went on your very first date, right? Like everything you've never done before is scary. And even if you've sold 4, 5, 6 times, it's not like you're doing it every other day. And so I just like to sort of, make sure that people are aware of, like, if you want to do this, it is going to require facing fear a little bit. But on the other end of it, it's so extremely rewarding. But if you're just trying to live in the land of comfort, you won't probably ever be a homeowner. So I just try to encourage people and use those analogies because it's true. It's just true. And so if you don't want to stay stuck in where you are, it's going to require moving forward, taking action, and probably getting uncomfortable and then having to face that and move through it.
Oh, that's a great point for sure. So Betty, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your heart and expertise with us. For anyone listening who's dreaming of buying, selling, or investing in Mansfield or the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area, and who wants to work with someone who treats every transaction with faith, honor, and excellence, Betty Joyce and DeBrew Realty is your first call. You can connect with Betty directly through the links in our show notes or visit DeBrewRealty.com for more. And if you're thinking about getting pre-approved, have questions about financing, or want to make your next move smooth and stress-free, I'd love to help you as well. Visit us at dreamhomepodcast.com or reach out through the link below. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the Dream Home Podcast, leave a review, and share this with anyone you know who's on their journey to finding their dream home. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. And Betty, thanks again. It's been great having you here. Thanks for taking time to join us, and best wishes for the upcoming year here, because I know it's going to be a good one for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you today. I really appreciate all the questions and the thoughtfulness.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Dream Home Podcast, hosted by John Nagle. Ready to take the next step toward your dream home? Visit www.dreamhomepodcast.com for resources, tips, and expert advice. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and join us next time for more real estate insights and mortgage tips. Until then, happy home hunting.